Hello. It's been a while. Lately there has been a lot of talk online about modern art and abstract art, and I have a lot of thoughts on this because I don't like classifying art as is or is not because um one of the things we learn about art at the beginning of any time, I think, is that it's subjective. And one of the things we learn about the world is that a lot of things can be subjective and that objective and subjective are two different things. And we learn that in language and in expression and everything. And so I don't like the notion that the one thing that can't be subjective is art. Because while people will say it and people will think they believe it. This kind of conversations where it's like, well, I could do this, or it looks like a toddler made this. Well, this is you just saying that you think art has to have limits and lines. And the thing is, when we start talking about art as something that has to have limits and lines, when do we stop really, when do we stop limiting things, and when do we stop creating these um oppressive lines and rigid systems of what is and what isn't, it reflects not only on the kind of art we consume and the kind of media we consume, but also on the kind of people we become, because art has always been indicative of our times and of who we are, and it has always been something that is used as a tool of expression. In revolutions there are symbols that categorize them. In periods of time there are classic elements to it, like in romanticism and all that kind of stuff, where it's like there are key pieces that make it what it is, and a product of its time. So art is not only just something that is so important to what we as people become and to what but it is sorry but it's also important to show who we have been. um and there should not be lines on that, because at the end of the day, when we set lines, it's almost as if we're expecting conformity, and as if we want everybody to be this one thing, this one aspect of who we really are as people. And that's just not the case at all. Um, it is completely like, what's the word? How do I describe this? It's just it's difficult to categorize art because it's also difficult to categorize people. And I believe that people are art, and the people who create it are too. Sorry, that's the exact same thing. I mean to say is that I believe that people are art, and that art they create does not have to be um, specific. It doesn't have to be what someone expects art to be. It doesn't have to be this huge piece of art where it is technically complex and everything, even though a lot of our great works today are, like, I don't know, the Mona Lisa. I mean, that is impressive not only for what it is, but for its technique. But there are also, pieces of work out there that are impressive for their technique as well, but they're modern, yet they're not seen within the same regard. And I feel like it's not that I want like things to be listed, or been like, okay, well, classical is up here and modern's down here or something like that. I just think that every piece of art has a place within its own right. And I don't really think it's fair to say that one is incorrect while another one is. Um, Time and effort is one thing into pieces of art, sure, but that's not the only thing that makes it art. I mean, this has been something talked about from like the beginning of time. What is and what isn't art? What are the things that we can do or the things that we can make, and how can we classify them as art? some people would classify things that are just plain made by people as art, like tools or things like that. Some people would say that's art. And at the end of the day, I'm not really someone to disagree with that. I don't think I'm an authority on what is and what isn't art. Um, there's this story along with a piece of art. It's called Fountain by R. Mutt. Or was it R. Mutt? I don't know, it's by Marcel Duchamp. I hope I'm saying that right. It is a urinal. And that's it. It's a urinal. And it wasn't made with artistic intent, I guess. It was like, whether it is art or it's not, like, that's a question, I guess, up to you. But I'm using it as an example to tell you that it was first used as like this idea. Yeah, it was an idea. It was kind of to see what would the traditionalist of the time would say if they saw something like this, if they saw ready-made art. Ready-made art is kind of like just, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's art that you didn't make yourself. It's something that you like probably found or something like that. It's ready-made. It's right there, Um but art doesn't have to be just about what it is, what the object in front of you is. Sometimes art requires context. Sometimes it can't just be what you're looking at. And I think that frustrates a lot of people who dislike modern and abstract art. And I think that's why, because it requires context. It can't be seen as just what it is. And my personal theory on why I think it's frustrating is because I think a lot of people look at very traditional art and they feel something immediate. And um, while I think that's great and I think that's like a wonderful way to look at art, I think that sometimes with modern art, the emotion is a little bit confusing. I think that sometimes you can't really see what the point of it is, and therefore you think, well, there is no point if I can't see the point. And I find that a little bit of a narrow kind of thinking. And I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but like, um taking the time to understand something is really important, and I feel like a lot of people don't want to take the time to understand it. And I think that with the way they look at modern or abstract art, they think it's like, well, you know they think it makes some sort of mockery out of art if it's not insanely intense and elaborate and complex. But you know art can be an idea, it can be a feeling, it can I'm what I'm trying to say, what I'm a huge champion of, is that art can be absolutely anything you want it to be. Sorry, I'm trying to pick a song. um but going back to Fountain, it was like just a kind of experiment, I guess. It was meant to challenge traditionalists of the time to see how they would react to something that is not within what they believe is art. This comes from, I think it's a book, What Are You Looking At by Gumpertz. It's, again, names are not my strong suit, but the whole idea is that, like, well, why are they the ones who get to decide? Duchamp thought himself that artists should be the ones to decide what can be categorized as art. I personally think that when we put lines on it at all, when art is rigid, what is it? Art has always meant to be expression. It has always meant to be limitless. And here we're trying to categorize it. We're trying to say that this is and this isn't. I find it really difficult to say who can and cannot categorize art because, well, art is not just art is not just one person specifically. It is not just the viewer and it is not just the artist. It is a collection of everybody that encounters it. And I think a, both are very important and very crucial in, you know, the enjoyment and the appreciation of art, obviously. At least I think so. And um I guess neither can really say what is and what isn't art, because at the end of the day, people will be, I don't know, people will be, what's the word? I guess biased in the way they see things, and it's really hard to be impartial, especially when it comes to art, because people have opinions. And art has to be meaningful in a way, I guess. And anyone can find meaning in really anything, and if I can't find meaning in one piece of art, or if its meaning doesn't hit me or strike anything in me, then that's just me. But that doesn't mean that my neighbor probably would think the same, or their neighbor, or whatever. You know what I mean? I believe that art is for everybody, and that if a piece of art isn't for me, that doesn't mean a piece of art isn't for somebody else. And so to limit what isn't art, and to say that it is something without value, and that it is something that like anyone could really make, I think is, I don't know, a very narrow way of looking at it. And also, if you really believed anyone could make it, nobody's really stopping you from making it. And I don't mean this to be in like, okay, well, you didn't. I mean this to say in like, if you truly believe anyone can do it, then I think you should too. I think you should go out there and express yourself in a way that you think is appropriate, and in a way that you think art should be. But I think it's kind of wonderful that abstract or modern art can be come in any form that allows anybody to express it. I mean, at the end of the day, why are we so upset that art like this can be accessible? Um, it could be like, why are we so upset that there's a form of art out there that makes it easy for anybody to express themselves? You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to minimize the modern art that is currently out there, because a lot of them really do take a lot from a person. Not every single piece of modern art out there is easy to replicate or anything like that. I mean, there are a lot of cases in art history where it was, in fact, very, very difficult to replicate. And there's this painting that's coming to mind, but I'm blanking on the name. But it's this red canvas, and people always looked at it as, it's a very popular story. I'm pretty sure. I hope that you know what I'm talking about. Um, but it is known to be, um, when you first looked at it, it was very, I guess, simple. I mean, it was just red on canvas. At least that's what it looked like to the naked eye, I guess. Someone looked at this and was very angered by it that they destroyed it. And when art is destroyed, what do people do? They call in someone to fix it, someone to try and save it, preserve it, and nobody could. And people tried, but nobody could. What's the word? Get it to be to what they needed it to be. Ugh, I'm really blanking on the name. Wait. Okay, so it was Who's Afraid of Red, Yellow, and Blue, I think, number 3. And it was by Barnett Newman. That was the piece of art that I was thinking of, the one that got slashed. So it was just, it used different, the guy who tried to restore the painting used different techniques to what the artist would have used. And because of that, the restoration, it wasn't perfect, and it wasn't what was expected, and it wasn't an accurate um fix, I guess, to the original painting. So I think this just goes to show that, like, while it may be not what you think is like a traditional, complex, and impressive painting, it is, it is impressive within its own right. I mean, abstract art at the end of the day is meant to just be something that we try to understand, and that we try to give new meanings to. I think that I really like art and music and film because, well, maybe not film, I don't know, but I like art and I like music because you can really take away different things from it. And I say that about music, which I feel like a lot of people don't think so, but I say that about music because there's a song that I really love that I always think of as really sad and that it always makes me cry, but a friend of mine thinks that it's actually a very happy song, very upbeat, but that's, I don't know, very silly example, I guess. But I just, art is meant to be what you take away from it, and we can take away different things. I don't think we have to all believe in the same things or see the same things the same way, but I do think that we should all respect the effort that went into certain pieces, because it not only, regardless of effort, it does take a lot from a person to create something and put it out there, especially in such a controversial genre or sect or whatever you want to call it of art. um Sorry, English is not my first language. um okay, I'm sorry, I really like using that as an excuse when I can't find the word for something, but it really isn't my first language. um Now I just lost what I was gonna say, really. Huh. Okay. Well, I guess I'll move on. Okay. I'm sorry. It's all over the place today. I don't really have a set thing I want to talk about. I just wanted to talk, really. But I guess we could talk about Portrait of Ross in LA, which is one of my favorite pieces of, I guess, ready-made art. Um I actually wrote an essay about this, so I am using that as a reference, so please bear with me while I try to like piece together what I'm trying to say. But basically it is, this piece of art is just a bunch of hard candies piled up into a corner, and that's it, really. It's like a rainbow candy, not like, it's just hard candies of different colors and it's all piled up in a corner. And that is the piece of art. That is it. And I think a lot of people would look at that and be like, yeah, I could definitely make that. And I mean, 100% you can definitely make that. There's really nothing technically difficult about that. But if you go to a museum and you check it out and you look at it and then you think, okay, cool, it's just a bunch of hard candy on the floor, you lose out on so much of what makes it a truly wonderful piece of art. I mean, the beauty of it is within its story, within its context, and I think that also is a, like, I think did say this before, but I can't remember. But I think what frustrates a lot of people is that you do need context for a lot of abstract or modern art pieces, because especially installations and especially sculptures, um, they require a lot of what's it called, context. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's what those little placards in museums and galleries are there for, to give you that context, you know. But Portrait of Ross in LA, and that's what it's unofficially called. Officially it's called Untitled. It's by Gonzalez Torres, and it is, I guess you could say, commentary about the AIDS epidemic and the loss that came from it. This weighs this the candy weighs about 175 pounds of candy. It weighs 175 pounds. I'm sorry. Which is, I guess, said to be the average weight of like an adult male at the time. Um, it's just supposed to represent, I mean, the loss that came with the AIDS epidemic, and it is, I think, such a powerful statement. I mean, you're just looking at someone and you're looking at them and they're a person and they're real, and then they're in front of you and then they're gone, and then you look at this representation of them and it's like pieces of a whole person, and you think, okay, well, this can't possibly be somebody, but it means to be somebody, you know. It used to be, and it's a representation of who they are, who they could have been, I guess, and who was lost, you know. In the museum, you're welcome to take away a piece when you see it. And I don't know, I think that's just so impactful. And I think I really don't know how to explain how that specific piece of art makes me feel, and I don't know why. I really can't wrap my mind around it, but it's really beautiful, and I have goosebumps right now just talking about it. And I think that it is should be a very well respected piece of art. And I think if people knew, and I think it's a very popular piece of art actually, and I think that with the context of this piece, more people would respect it for what it is, which is, and I think is a great piece of art. But I mean, deniers of ready-made art, like the traditionalists of Duchamp's time, they wouldn't see it that way. And I don't know. I think more than anything, isn't art supposed to be untraditional? And shouldn't we allowed to create things, even though people might say, "Well, this isn't right"? I mean, some of the greatest art pieces of art from our time came from opposition. Um, And yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Um, I really hope it made some sense. Um, and yeah, thank you, I guess. And yeah.